Hi, everybody. This is Steve. Coming at you at Monday, June 2nd, I guess. And I wanted to record a short video just to update a couple of different things that's going on and explain a couple of things that are coming up that might be easier for me to explain in the video. The first thing is I updated the schedule just slightly. If you go look at the schedule, it's linked up there. You'll see what I mean. Basically, the main change is comes not this week but next. I'm looking at it, this screen I have on my desk over here. Next week we'll be doing some readings on the first part of the week on the hashtag Yes All Women that appeared after the shootings at UC Santa Barbara. And there's some readings about that and the sort of phenomenon of that Twitter hashtag. And it's a good live example of something that's happened recently. And the other thing that's going to be happening is that both Seth and Jesse will be giving their electronic versions of their presentations for as part of the graduate project, and we'll work out the details of that when we get closer to that. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what I really wanted to talk about, which is the usability text to hypertext project. Okay, now the first part of that is going to be due on Wednesday of this week, and as you know, the first part of that means looking at this Michigan Firehouse Museum website. We've been having some discussion about this so far. It seems to be going okay, and then I want you to each individually write up a brief summary of what you see as the strengths and the weaknesses, or strengths and suggested improvements for this website, with an audience in mind of not only me but potentially the people at the Firehouse Museum, because literally I know these people and I might end up showing them at least parts of this, especially in terms of trends for how they might revise their website. Keep in mind that you should be making connections to the things that we've read and discussed about good website design. Now the second part of the website project is you need to make a website based on the text that you submitted earlier in the semester that you're going to convert into a hypertext for the project. Okay. Now, a couple of things that are really important to keep in mind here. This is a website, not a web page. Okay, and this is not merely putting something up on the web. So there's two things that I take as a given and an assumption. Okay, the first one is that all the discussion that we've had with the Reddish book and other things, as part of this site, you will divide the content up of your 5 to 10 or so page essay into a series of discrete pages that link to each other through some sort of home page. In other words, there's a structure here where you're chunking the information of these different sites, you're chunking the information in your text project into different discrete pages. You're not going to put the whole thing up as one big long page, because that would be silly. That doesn't make any sense. The other thing is that it's not merely web publishing. So in other words, you're not converting something into a PDF, something that can be printed off and read later on another device. Rather, you're making your text into a hypertext, a website that's meant to be read only online. Okay, so you're making a web site, not just a page. As part of that too, there's maybe some things that you're going to need to do to really make your website into something that translates into that genre, which is one of the reasons why I like having people work with a previously written text document, because then that points to some of the problems of writing for the web or some of the challenges. So, for example, there are certain things that are unique to the genre of website documents. Typically, websites have images, and there's a pretty good chance that the thing that you submitted for me does not have images. So you're going to want to have some sort of images and color sensibility and font layouts and things like that. Writing for the web tends to be shorter and more succinct, so there may be some places in there where you need to cut some things, and that's totally okay. Writing for the web tends to have links to other documents, and there's probably a pretty good chance that you didn't actually have links to other documents in your print thing. So there's all kinds of different conventions that you're going to have to, all kinds of different ways that you're going to have to change the original text to make it fit into the website genre. And that is part of the point of the assignment. So you should feel free to do that wherever you see fit. I like to make the analogy of it being like the movie. So you've probably read any number of different books in which the book is significantly different than the movie, where the movie is kind of the basis for the book, but it's not exactly an exact copy of the book. That's what we're talking about here. It doesn't have to be an exact copy of what you did before. It just has to be the basis of it, okay? Um, the next thing I want to mention here real quick is when it comes to actually converting a big chunk of text into a website that you can then sort of start working with in terms of the HTML encoding, that's where some of the software stuff that we've talked about before might come in handy. The software like Composer, Dreamweaver, SeaMonkey, and things like that. Because what you can do with that software is you can copy and paste chunks of text into that software, and then it's a lot easier to do like the paragraphing and headings and stuff like that. You're still gonna have to get in there and mess with the code, especially in terms of design issues and whatnot. But it's especially when you're working with something that has like multiple paragraphs, coding that all by hand, it can get to be a bit of a pain in the you know what. So this, if you haven't played with this software yet, this is probably a pretty good chance to do that. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about in specifically is some of the things I talk about in terms of the second part of the usability part of this assignment. Now, the last time I taught this class, this first part, this pretest part, would made a little bit more sense because it's actually discussed in this book. This is the Rocket Surgery Made Easy book, which the Steve Krug guy who did the video, and he talks about this sort of pretest as a kind of back of the napkin sort of just to get started usability test. And literally what he's suggesting, and this is what I want you to do, is make on a piece of paper a sketch of what you think your website is going to look like. So, something like, say, this. Okay, so like, that would be the main page, and these are the other pages from it. I've got this arrow here to indicate like a link to another site. Same with those arrows here. And anyways, make a page like this, and then find a user, find someone who can agree to do this usability testing, and explain to them what you have in mind, and ask them what they think. That's it. And the thing is that you may be surprised at some of these results, because sometimes people will say, oh, that sounds like a great idea, I would do this, that, and the other thing. Sometimes they'll ask questions like, why would you divide it up like that? Sometimes they'll give suggestions like, maybe you should divide it up like this, and so forth. So in other words, the idea is that before you get too far into actually making the website, do something on a piece of paper to show your audience what you think this might look like. Another thing that you can do that I've had people do in class before that can be kind of fun is use these index cards, okay? And I don't have anything written on these, but you get the idea. Well, the idea is being like on each one of these, you'd write like a sentence or so about what you think will go on this page. So in other words, each card would represent a page within your site. And then you would write a sort of brief summary of what would appear on each one of those pages on each card, and then give those cards to your user and say, arrange these and see what they come up with. Most of the time, they're probably going to come up with pretty much what you came up with, because especially since we're working with mostly essay-like things we're trying to convert into a website, sometimes they come up with something different. And again, those differences can be interesting and useful in the feedback process, right? So that's usability test part one. Usability part one is you're just going to literally sketch what you think your site is going to look like. That usability test is going to be due next week. Usability test part two is essentially after you actually make your website, the first full draft of your website, you're going to get another user to take a look at it, and that's the one that's going to correspond a little bit more to the kind of Krug example that we had in the video. That is, you're going to have an actual website and have them hopefully with some tasks in mind of like things you want them to do, and you're going to have them click around through that website and talk a lot about it and use that feedback to make some revisions, but also to write about that process in your essay. I hope that kind of makes sense in terms of explaining what you're going to be doing here with the last, and that's the last big project for the class in terms of making a website, which, given it's called Writing for the World Wide Web, and we've been doing all this HTML and CSS stuff, you should probably be able to do that. Okay, ask questions below. See you online.